Good evening. The regular meeting of Lakewood City Council for December 4th, 2023 is hereby called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now pause for a moment of silence. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Baker.
Here.
Bullock.
Here.
Keppel. Here. Litton.
Here.
Marks. Here. Rader.
Yep.
Schachner.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held November 20th, 2023.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 1, substitute ordinance 18, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately establishing new purchasing limits in line with the Ohio Revised Code for the city of Lakewood.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, Council President. We're talking about the bidding ordinance now?
Yes.
Okay. The ordinance that was approved or under consideration, does it include those three minor non-substantive changes that were proposed today?
I think we have to make those on the
Councilman Schachner.
I believe we need to make those on the floor. If you want to describe those three non-substantive changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. Council President, this afternoon I submitted just three non-substantive changes to the substitute ordinance that was recommended out of committee last week. Very briefly, the first one is in section 4, and through the various iterations, we somehow omitted the word shall, and it is necessary there, and that is simply a typo. And that's the first, that's in section 4A, the underlined word shall. And then on section 5, section A, I think fourth line down, we did need the word the after all. And along that same line, I proposed deleting the words and or competitive processes because that language was taken out in two other sentences of a prior version. So just for the sake of consistency, I propose taking that out. So there have been substantive reiterations of this ordinance. I think it's an excellent ordinance now, and the reason this is being done this way is because there were so many red lines prior to this point. So I apologize and just ask your indulgence, but I did speak to the finance chair, Schachner, on this, and I think the consensus of the committee is with these non-substantive changes, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Mr. President.
Councilman Schachner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Director Vargo. I do believe that these changes go in line with what the intent of the committee was. Sometimes, well, most times legislating could be a messy process, and it's good to clean it up before it's all passed. I will propose a amendment in line. If you'll really,
I'll first withdraw my motion to adopt, but go ahead.
okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I will move to amend ordinance number 18-2023 as substituted as follows. Oh boy. In section 4, in the fourth line from the bottom. I know. Oh, it's highlighted. Great. But just for record, I have it on the fourth line from the bottom. we should insert after in addition, comma, shall be inserted. And then in addition to that, in section 5, line 4, we would add the word the after of, and so it reads outline of the internal controls. And on that same line, we would delete and or competitive processes.
A second. Motion's been made and seconded. That motion to amend. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Councilman Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. President. I am on the Finance Committee, and we had a robust back and forth on this. So I just want to clarify and make sure I follow the explanation. So two of those are typographical / wording clarity changes. The one that I want to make sure we're on the same page about is the proposed deletion of and or competitive processes. So the final wording of, if the motion were to be adopted, the final wording would read how? Would it be the Director of Finance shall include an outline of the internal controls, period? Or would it say?
Would read, one second, it would read, shall include an outline of the internal controls in legislation to council, and then on and on and on.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. So that doesn't comport with what I recall the committee discussing, and I guess I'd love to hear a little more detailed argument by the law director, but also I know Councilman Baker was significantly involved in authoring some of this, so I'd love to understand whether all of those named parties involved are on the same page on this or not.
Mr. President?
Councilman Baker.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Councilman Bullock. I am on board. Ultimately, whatever that process is going to be approved by council. So if we don't feel like it's competitive enough, we can not approve it or alter it. So the way it's codified in the code and the way we've set up the structure, and I appreciate the law department working with us and also the finance department. Obviously, this is a big change to how Lakewood procures services and goods, but I think it strikes the right balance between transparency and process to make sure we are thoughtful about how we acquire goods and services, but also transparent about it. So I feel like this strikes the right balance.
And a quick follow-on, just
Councilman Bullock.
clarify a little bit. So now that I'm recalling, so also new compared to the version that we discussed at length in the committee, I think at the time we didn't have the portion that says in legislation for council to council. Could this, in legislation to council for approval. So now this version would clarify that there will be some piece of legislation that council will formally approve, as opposed to it was understood to be incorporated in the annual budget in some form. Am I getting that correct?
Mr. President, yes, similar to the reproductive rights policy within the city, it would be something that is submitted to council and then once approved cannot be changed without further act of council.
Okay, so the technique here is all of the substance is going to be addressed in this separate piece of legislation. And
Yes.
This section 5 would refer to that separate piece of legislation. Okay, thank you. Answered my question.
Thank you. Together with the mayor, colleagues, you may recall my having proposed this, and I'm glad it has gone through the meat grinder that is our finance committee, and that so many hands have touched it in some way to make it something that seems agreeable to most, if not all. And so I just want to say I appreciate the process everybody's taken with this legislation. So on the motion to substitute or amend, to amend. Any further discussion? And hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Baker,
Yes?
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Marks, Rader?
Yes.
Schachner?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Move to adopt.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Baker?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
Keppel?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
Schachner?
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 2023-60, a resolution to take effect immediately appointing 5 members to the Charter Review Commission for a 6-month term beginning January 1st, 2024.
I'll first entertain any motions anyone have as far as, nominations may go for the Charter Review Commission. I might as well. Okay. All right, hearing none, then I'll move to yeah, that's good. No, I know, and we're receiving applicants. I just thought I'd see if anyone had anything out there. Hearing none, then I will move to defer.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 3, Resolution 2023-55, a resolution to take effect immediately appointing Sam Pearson, Jessica Cotton, and 1 person to the Anti-Racism Task Force for 2-year terms beginning January 1st, 2024.
Again, I'll entertain any motions to fill in that blank if anyone had any recommendations. All right, well, we have one more meeting before we have to have a full slate on our anti-racism task force. So let's keep our eyes peeled. I'll move to defer.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And Madam Clerk, before we move on, can everybody make sure their microphones are off if they're not speaking? I hear kind of like when you listen to a seashell and can hear that little. Just make sure, just from the last meeting, just in case, just to make sure. Okay. Everybody's blaming Jason. Councilman Schachner, thank you for checking your microphone. He's absolved. All right. Madam Clerk, item number 4.
Item 4, Resolution 2023-57, a resolution to take effect immediately appointing 1 person to the Planning Commission for the 5-year term beginning January 1st, 2024.
I'll just move to defer right off the bat.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 5, report from Finance Committee meeting held November 27th and today, December 4th.
Chairman Schachner.
All right, how's it sound now? Echoing weird?
You sound fine.
It's feedbacking.
As long as you shut it off when you're not talking.
But how are people going to know it's me? Start over. Thank you. Is that better? All right, great. Thank you, Mr. President. So, we have, since we've last been here, we've now had 2 budget hearings. We heard from the Law Department, Mayor's Office, Council's Office, Public Safety, and CDBG, ESG allocations discussion. Really informative and, let's say, not too verbose presentations. One thing that I think stood out, at least to me, in public safety's budget was that traffic citations were up 300% through the meeting, through the date of the meeting, which shows a commitment and really a focus on traffic enforcement. And I know that's a big issue among a lot of our residents, and quite frankly, now it's echoing again. The majority of our, at least my calls, come about traffic and speeding. So thank you again, Chief Fisher, for making that a priority. And tonight we heard from the IT division, the Human Services Department, and Building and Housing Department. We're all excited about the 2024 housing survey that will be occurring next year in October. Also learned more about the commercial building survey, which has been something that council has been talking about and for a while. So glad we got to it. And Human Services, as always, does a lot more than can be fit in the presentation, and we appreciate all the work they're doing. So I believe all our questions were answered competently, and thank you again for taking the time to put together those presentations and making yourself available for our questions. Move to receive and file. Did it backwards.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. And I'd like to move that we next suspend our rules and read items 6 through 22 concurrently, sequentially.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Baker,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Marks, Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Item 6, ordinance 22, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately to establish appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Lakewood for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023. Item 7, ordinance 23, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds. Item 8, ordinance 24, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately to establish appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Lakewood for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024. Item 9, ordinance 25, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts for professional services and to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the purchase of repair, maintenance, and operating supplies, services, and equipment as authorized by the 2024 appropriation ordinance and the administrative code of the City of Lakewood. Item 10, ordinance 26, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing and directing the mayor, director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts in accordance with the administrative code for vehicles, machinery, and equipment, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 11, ordinance 27, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts in accordance with the administrative code for buildings and facilities improvements, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 12, ordinance 28, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing and directing the mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts in accordance with the administrative code for parks and pools improvements, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 13, ordinance 29, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing and directing the mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts in accordance with the administrative code for sidewalk improvement program, contracts not to exceed the specified amounts shown without separate resolution of council. Danielle. I'll keep going then. Item 14, ordinance 30, 2023, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorize, all right, I'll finish this one up, and then you'll do item 15. The mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or purchasing manager to enter into contracts in accordance with the administrative code for traffic signs and signals, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council.
Item 15, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or the purchasing manager to enter into contracts for street infrastructure improvements, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 16, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor, director of public safety, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or the purchasing manager to enter into contracts for water system replacement program, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 17, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor, director of public safety, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, and/or the purchasing manager to enter into contracts for wastewater system and treatment improvement program, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 18, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the mayor, director of public safety, the director of public works, the director of law, the director of finance, the director of planning and development, and/or the purchasing manager to enter into service contracts for the Department of Planning and Development, contracts not to exceed the specified amount shown without separate resolution of council. Item 19, an ordinance to take effect immediately, amending sections 902.04, rates and charges, and 915.01, establishments of rates of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances to establish water and sewer rates for the years 2024 through 2028. Item 20, an ordinance to take effect January 1st, 2024, amending the tax code of the City of Lakewood to incorporate changes that have been mandated by the passage of HB 3333 by the State of Ohio. Item 21, an ordinance to take effect January 1st, 2024, to provide for creating positions and rates of pay for full-time and certain part-time annual salaried employees and hourly rate employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement in the several departments, divisions, and offices of the City of Lakewood, including the Chief of Fire, Chief of Police, and Civil Service Commissioners, and superseding all prior salary ordinances. Item 22, a resolution to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor to submit the fiscal year 2024 one-year action plan of the FY20-FY24 five-year consolidated plan, which includes dollar allocations and activities to be funded with federal community development block grant and emergency solutions grant resources, any other entitlement funds received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, all amendments thereto, and all understandings and insurances contained therein, and incorporates the city's application to HUD for FY24 CDBG and ESG funds.
Is that our conclusion? All right, I'll move to defer.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 23, communication from President Litton regarding recommendations to Charter Review Commission.
Thank you. And I often attempt to abridge my communications in the interest of time, but I think aspects of this need to be read verbatim just for the sake of understanding. I am going to actually start with reading the second to last paragraph, actually, just because I think it needs to be underscored as it pertains to my role in suggesting these changes. And that is that while council has the authority to recommend changes to the charter, changes regarding council members' own salaries will be less politically fraught if initiated by the Charter Review Commission. I have attached here some suggested language consistent with the Civil Service Commission's recommendations as a jumping off point for your discussion. I respectfully request that you review the above mentioned Civil Service Commission reports, consider the duties and responsibilities of our elected officials, and deliberate amongst yourselves as to the topic. And it's worth pointing out in the next paragraph that I will be stepping down from City Council here at the end of the year, and I remain committed to Lakewood. But I also understand the fact that this is sometimes a politically wrought conversation, and for it to be had and suggested and recommended by someone who will not benefit from said recommendations seems to be a timely use. I also want to thank our council office for assisting in a lot of the work in putting all of this together. Members of the Charter Review Commission, thank you for volunteering your time and expertise to the important task of reviewing the charter and making recommendations for its improvement. As the outgoing council president with nothing to gain financially by raising this topic, I would like to highlight for the commission the current process by which the salaries of Lakewood's elected officials are increased, and advocate for you to consider recommending revisions to the charter that streamline and improve the current processes. Articles 2.3, 3.5, and 6.7 of the third amended charter govern the process by which salaries are increased for council members and the mayor. Articles 2.3 and 3.5 allow council to increase these salaries by ordinance. However, council has been understandably reluctant to do so over the years due to concerns that such action will appear self-serving. Therefore, council has relied upon the process set forth in Article 6.7, whereby council may accept, reject, or take no action on the salary recommendations made by our Civil Service Commission. In its most recent report to City Council in 2020, the Civil Service Commission acknowledged that the current provisions in the charter prevent the city's elected officials from achieving a salary that reflects the responsibilities and expectations of these offices. In its 2020 report, the Commission explicitly recommended that the salaries of both the mayor and members of council be adjusted annually pursuant to an administrative mechanism not currently permitted by the charter. Pursuant to the second amended charter, which outlined a similar but slightly different process for salary increases, the Civil Service Commission reports from 2016, 2014, and 2010 each explicitly recommend changes to the charter to allow for an annual salary adjustment. This is bold. The message is clear. Despite the passage of time and the rotation of new commissioners, the Civil Service Commission has consistently voiced the same recommendation for 20 years that council and mayoral salaries ought to be increased annually, just like any other position at City Hall. The current compensation for a council member is $13,000 annually, plus the option of health care benefits. In my 8 years of experience as a member of this body, I feel that this salary is not enough to entice a diverse and representative sample of residents to endure the rigors of campaigning for the office, and if elected, to serve it in the dedicated manner that is expected of a public official in the city of Lakewood. Counting its committee meetings and general meetings, City Council meets on average 90 times per year to perform the basic functions. In 2023, the council spent approximately 70 hours in these meetings. Above and beyond preparing for and attending public meetings, my colleagues and I take resident calls on nights and weekends, attend citywide events, draft legislation, and collaborate with the city's administrative team on these policies on an ongoing basis and procedures on an ongoing basis. Council leadership, including the president and vice president, should shoulder additional duties that are not reflected in the current salary structure, most importantly, supervising the clerk's office. So I will move to refer this communication to the Charter Review Commission.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Schachtner.
I just want to clarify one thing. So for the office of president and vice president of council, there's no additional salary for that. It's 13 grand, just like the rest of us.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? The job's worth every bit of it, don't get me wrong. Vice President Keppel.
Thank you. I sent around today to colleagues seeing this on the docket. A few years ago, there was a report about how there were fewer women in elected office in Ohio than other states, tend to be towards the bottom, and part of that is, in fact, because most women start their elected office in city council positions and school boards. And those positions tend to be part-time paid, even though the time commitment is more extensive, and that can be a hindrance for women, minorities, and people with less affluence. So I do appreciate the point that President Litton that you brought up in here about the equity involved. So thank you.
Thank you. On the motion to refer, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 24, communication from Councilmember Marks regarding Studio West 117th revised ARPA application.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, in February 2023, Lakewood City Council established a process whereby community organizations, city departments, and local businesses were invited to propose specific uses for a $3 million tranche of ARPA funds specifically set aside for projects and initiatives proposed by Council. As part of this process, Council received written applications and held a series of public hearings to deliberate on the highest and best use of those one-time funds. On May 15, 2023, Council adopted Resolution 2023-22, making allocations from its ARPA funds to several projects, including a $50,000 allocation to Studio West 117, in accordance with the purpose outlined in its original application to Council. On November 21, 2023, Studio West 117 submitted the attached revised application with the intention to amend the purpose for which its ARPA allocations will be used. Please refer this communication to Committee of the Whole for further discussion. Thank you.
Let's see, move to refer to Committee of the Whole. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Bullock.
thanks to the councilwoman for working on this issue, and I continue to support it. Can we, is our goal to put ourselves in a position to take final action by the end of the year? I would support doing so if that's possible. So I don't know if we intend to have another committee of the whole session before 2 weeks from now as our
Sure. So
regularly scheduled last meeting.
Right. Thank you for that comment, Councilman. In an email I sent today, I did address that, given the next agenda item, we are probably going to need to meet with Committee of the Whole one more time. And with that, this could be tacked on as an additional discussion point, and not tacked on to diminish it in any way. It's very important. I'm just simply saying that we could meet about all the items referred to Committee of the Whole at that time. It's probably going to require a non-Monday between now and the next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. The spirit of my line of questioning, and it sounds like your answer as well, is just to put ourselves in a position to dispose of, or to hear and consider this proposal in a timely way, and I'd be happy to do it in Committee of the Whole or otherwise as needed. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion on the referral to Committee of the Whole? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 25, communication from President Litton regarding proposed ARPA allocations.
Before I start reading, this one also relatively verbatim, I wanted to comment that after some good conversations with the administration that came after our docket deadline, I already have some proposed adjustments, perhaps to this communication, but certainly to the accompanying resolutions as it pertains to administration or city funds that aren't under council's, aren't part of council's ARPA funds. And to simply say that instead of using the term unencumbered funds from ARPA projects that may not have cost as much as were expected or whatever the case may have been, that we not specify where the funds come from, and rather they could come from the general fund, they could come from someplace else, as opposed to that category. In essence, my point is that we're a little too specific in a way that might hinder the ability to fund certain projects, and it could help to be more broad in our approach to that. Anyway, dear colleagues, please see the accompanying series of resolutions that effectively complete Lakewood City Council's 2023 ARPA allocations, utilize a portion of the 2024 funds under council's purview or group funds, and then also seek to allocate some of the city or the administration's funds as well. These following proposed allocations represent projects that both council and the administration consider time sensitive and high priority. They also draw down the remaining council 2023 funds and begin to draw down the 2024 funds using the recently released ADA task force plan as a guide. And you can see the table there that outlines where those funds are coming from, realizing that some of this will get discussed in committee, some perhaps on the floor tonight, but wanted to put that all together. And I really do have to thank Vice President Keppel for helping keep us together in terms of who had what and how much left and things of that sort. And then with the proposed water and sewer rate increases pending on the docket, I think it'd be fair for council members and residents to question why we're not just putting these funds towards reducing those rates, but that possibility was analyzed, and it was determined that even using all of council's remaining funds, we would reduce water rates for our residents by pennies. Thus, Mayor George and council sought other worthy and impactful projects to pursue. I'll also note, of course, that we allocated $25 million of our roughly $48 million in ARPA funds to the IWIP plan, Integrated Wet Weather Improvement Plan, anyway. I'd personally like to thank, again, in writing, Vice President Keppel for her work in shepherding council through the process and for tracking our progress on these one-time funds, as well as Mayor George for allotting her time and that of her administration's many experts to help bring these bills and resolutions to reality. While I acknowledge that we're currently stretched thin by the budget and those conversations, I respectfully request that we make time to allocate all remaining 2023 funds before year end. Sincerely yours. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Bullock.
if you were in the middle of saying something, I can.
I was about to say something, but I wasn't in the middle of it, so go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So first of all, thank you to you and to the Vice President for coordinating quite a lot of moving parts here and for inviting us to stay on schedule. I think that is a smart and sensible approach to take, and I appreciate both the earlier action council work together to accomplish related ARPA funds this year, and then we're proposing here to finish strong. One question is first of all, I marvel at the term re-unencumbered, but more seriously, if some of these numbers, as we discuss this further, shift around a bit, do council members still have the wherewithal to make small adjustments to what appears here?
Absolutely, Councilman, and I think what happens in committee will help inform some of that. I think we've been, while it's like herding cats at times, it's also, I think we've been relatively nimble about moving funds here and there to make sure that we both allocate all of our funds, but do it in a efficient manner. So I expect nothing less in committee as we discuss these further. All right. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none on the motion to receive and file. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 26, Resolution 2023-66, a resolution to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor and/or director of finance or director of law to allocate and expend ARPA funds toward the creation of a parking lot on a vacant city-owned parcel at the northwest corner of Newman Avenue and Madison Avenue. And we have public comment on this, too.
Yes, I apologize. There is a public comment related to these ARPA funds, and I don't want to miss it. Let's get to that first. And the individual signed up to speak is Ralph Piuno. So some of these may get adopted this evening. So with that in mind, I'd urge you to speak now and name and address for the record too, please.
Missed the important thing. I think I know it by now. Ralph Puno, 12223 Madison. And to make everybody feel better, I'm not going to go through the whole diatribe again of why we need a parking lot. Everyone's heard it from me. I first wanted to thank John and Sarah for going through all this, the people, and then Cindy and John also for possibly allocating ARPA funds for this. So that could possibly get us $112,000 towards the parking lot, and the proposed budget on page 170 says there could be another $150,000 coming from economic development funds. So that puts us, roughly only leaving $27,000 to about $30,000 of funds needed from either general budget, re-encumbered, wherever we could find it from. So that's a lot less than we started off with, is just $300,000 out of the city budget, and that's why it was delayed. And one of the other comments that was brought up before is staffing, like engineering department, streets and roads. This isn't a priority for them, but I'm assuming if we get the funding, that could be worked through. And so I'm just hoping and asking that if we get this work through, that this could become a priority, not sit for another year, since it's been 5 already. So thank you.
Thank you. I will first move to, as I described in the communication, or in trying to present the communication, I will first move to amend this first resolution in the second last whereas clause to read, instead of what is there, whereas because the administration shares an interest in this project, the mayor will contribute the amount there, $187,833 from the city's general fund, ARPA funds, or other allowable funding source, semicolon, and. I hope that understood that encompasses the spirit of the adjustment that I had described in the communication. And we also ought to strike in section 2 just simply the words re-unencumbered ARPA funds. No, I'm sorry, re-unencumbered ARPA. We could just say recently re-unencumbered of the cities. We would strike recently re-unencumbered ARPA. So we'll just say cities funds and keep it general that way. Yeah, that's included in the motion to amend.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. And colleagues, if you have any questions at all,
Mr. President?
no. Councilman Rader.
Not on this motion. Happy that there's some ways to go about this, but this appears to be a change of use of that lot. Would certainly appreciate to go through some kind of committee process where we can talk a little bit more about what that means. I'm sure the planning department can walk us through like how this fits into the plan for the neighborhood. Not to sort of delay this too much longer. I understand it's been a long time. It's certainly something that I could see myself being supportive of, but I want to make sure that we give this much spending of public dollars a little bit more time to breathe, and we can get a sense of what the plan's going to be moving forward. That would be my preference.
Absolutely, and I will add that while we're discussing it, since we're discussing it, that I had intended to refer this item to committee. Any further discussion?
Mr. President, could you just clarify the motion in the whereas clause?
Sure, I will. You just want to hear the word re-unencumbered?
No, I just, what's being deleted, I think. In
Sure.
other words, you're proposing that we adopt more broadly worded language.
Correct. So the highlighted on the screen there, whereas clause, the second last one in this resolution, will read instead, whereas, comma, because the administration shares an interest in this project, the mayor will contribute $187,833 from the city's general fund, ARPA funds, or other allowable funding source, semicolon, and comma.
Understood, okay.
Okay, and then to strike in section 2, recently re-unencumbered ARPA. And I should add, I expect these amounts to be debated, things like that, once we're in committee as well, but that's how I would like to amend the resolution as it stands.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President.
Vice President Keppel.
And just for clarification, I think to Mr. Piono's point, that should economic development funds or other grant funding become available by amending this language, that gives the administration that flexibility to use those funds. Is that part of the intent?
Say your question again, I'm very sorry.
So, Mr. Piono's point about economic development funds or other available funding.
Right. It allows for any eligible use that is available to be put towards the project and not just the specific line of funding that I had originally mentioned.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the administration and the mayor for recognizing the importance of this project and making commitment to see it completed. So thanks, Mayor.
All right, on the motion to amend, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. I will then move to refer this item to Committee of the Whole.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 27, Resolution 2023-67, a resolution to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor and/or director of finance or director of law to allocate and expend ARPA funds toward the completion of the Lakewood Public Library's Madison Branch Story Walk project.
This one does not have matching funds or any funds that contemplated from the administration. So this is a rather simple, or at least affordable, $4,000 overall project for the Story Walk project at Madison Branch of Lakewood's Public Library. I foresee this as relatively cut and dry, and so with that, I'll move to adopt.
Mr. Chair,
Second.
Mr.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Bullock?
Yeah, Mr. President, first of all, thank you for taking the leadership on helping us draft this. There's a substantive change. We should clarify that there's actually 2 story walks, one also at Kaufman Park near the main branch as well. So that's the intended use. So, in a moment, I'd like to make a proposal to amend one of the whereas clauses, the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas clause in the
Just strike Madison Branch, essentially, and just have Story Walk project.
Yeah, and if you made projects plural, I think that would do the trick. And just for some context here, the planning department has been partnering with a couple of us on city council and with the Lakewood Public Library, doing very nice work. Director Leininger, who got a haircut or something today, could fill in, how the planning department's gotten a state government award to pay for a significant amount of this project. The planning department essentially has done some in-kind work already, and then the Lakewood Public Library has agreed to be the operator that curates and pays for and swaps out what's in the actual frames that would be installed along a section of the trail outside the rear of Madison Branch and Kaufman Park. The anticipated location would be the trail along the kids' play areas. So I hope this is a familiar project to the administration, and that's the context.
No, that's appreciated. I'll withdraw my motion to adopt, and I'll move to amend to change the project's name wherever mentioned to Lakewood Public Library's Story Walk Projects, plural.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion further? Vice President Keppel.
Thank you. Not so much on this particular motion, but generally, I just wonder if we, just as a process point, because we've had a written application, are we in possession of a written application for this project? I'm just, while this is a small amount and a very simple thing, just for consistency's sake, in terms of how we're allocating ARPA funds, I would feel more comfortable if we had that application.
Okay. Well, we're on a motion to amend. We can contemplate.
Mr. President.
We can contemplate when we would like to discuss and/or adopt this as well. Councilman Bullock.
I think we can provide that information by the committee of the whole meeting. I think that there's an application that exists from the city to the State Department. I think it's ODNR, and there's at least a year's of email back and forth on this. If there's a need to formalize it in some way further, we'd have to work on that to get, for example, signatures from the library. At some point, I think there would need to be some formal legal easement or contract, but we haven't gotten that far. So
It would be a brief committee discussion with an application in hand, I'm sure. So, on the motion to amend, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. I will now move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 28, Resolution 2023-68, a resolution to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor and our Director of Finance or Director of Law to allocate and expend ARPA funds toward the development of a smart city initiative.
I will, Director Vargo, I don't know if you'll allow it, but I would like to simply state that I would like to amend this resolution in the same fashion as Resolution 2023-66 in terms of the funds that would be pulled from for this purpose. would you prefer me to read it again verbatim on each?
I don't think that's necessary, Council President. Thank you. So you're just proposing that you use the same language for that, the
As
prior
for the
ordinance
first
as this
resolution?
one?
Yes.
Nobody is lacking any understanding of what you're proposing. so
Great. Okay, thank you. No, I mentioned the resolution out loud when I asked the question. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes, and I'll move to refer to Committee of the Whole.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 29, Resolution 2023-69, a resolution to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor and/or director of finance or director of law to allocate and expend ARPA funds towards upgrading signage at Lakewood City Hall.
I'll first move to amend as previously discussed.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And colleagues, just given my being the one verbally proposing and somewhat in writing, proposing this project, it's been our front signage in front of City Hall is in a sense the front door, the front porch of our city, and it has seen better days. And so with my remaining ARPA funds, I had hoped to allocate those monies toward upgrading the signage and replacing the signage at here at City Hall, just out front where it says City of Lakewood. Talking with school board, and when they did new signage at Taft and some other places, they ran the range of $23,000 to $25,000, electrified everything where updates can be on there and things like that. I'd imagine quotes would be similar, but I overshot in terms of the total budget on this intentionally, just to assure that proper funds were allocated for this purpose. So I viewed it as a relatively cut and dry project, and thus will move to adopt.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded, and please discussion.
Yeah, I'll, if you don't mind, and thank you, Madam Vice President, for allowing me to second this. No, I think this is a great opportunity to communicate with the community. I think we're just a small enough city where having a potentially digital sign or a sign that was a little more visible could actually help communicate what's going on here at the city, which has been, I've been on a binge lately on trying to make sure that we're doing our best job, being our best selves at communicating everything we're doing here at the city and everything that we have. So I fully support this. 20,000 actually seems a little low these days for sort of larger signs, but I'm sure the administration can use this to its benefit. So I appreciate the resolution, and certainly am in support of it.
Any further discussion, Vice President Keppel?
Thank you. And my hesitancy is not indicating a lack of support by any means. When I first was on council, I used to almost drive by every time and miss the driveway because the sign is after and it's blocked by the RTA station, and then I'd have to turn around in the police station. So I think it's, well past time. Plus, as Council President and I have discussed, I was encouraging a digital sign for increased communication, and I'm sure our new information officer will make good use of that. So my hesitancy was only because, again, just for consistency, I do like having an application process. However, since this is an internal use and does not have an external funder, I would be reasonably comfortable in moving forward on this tonight.
I appreciate your acquiescing, Vice President Keppel. Any further discussion on the motion to adopt? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Yeah, or Lakewood's Jumbotron. Yeah.
Item 30, Resolution 2023-70, a resolution to take effect immediately authorizing the mayor and/or director of finance or director of law to allocate and expend American Rescue Plan Act funds on certain high-priority projects identified in the Americans with Disabilities Act Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan.
Move to amend as previously discussed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to amend? I'll take that as a no or excitement.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Councilman Bullock.
Just for clarity, the motion as previously discussed refers to,
Those of resolutions 2023-66, 68, and 69.
okay, thank you.
Certainly. Where we adjusted where the funding source could come from. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And with that, given the thorough report from our ADA task force, and not to mention, I think, the shared idea of the importance of this, I did seek through this resolution to begin to utilize some of what would be called the group funds for 2024 from council. That isn't to come back from the grave and try to pull a fast one here or anything like that, but rather to acknowledge an important project for our city that I think we really ought to be paying attention to and prepared, and that is, in some ways, especially for the high priority items, pretty shovel ready, so to speak, to be able to move quickly on. And so with that, at least for the sake of discussion, I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. And Mayor, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. We've been having some robust discussions about a lot of these sorts of things, and I know that this is a priority for the administration as well, and so I just wanted to make sure I allowed for the opportunity to.
Thank you, Council President. Certainly a priority of ours as well. Great work to the ADA Task Force and getting this document to us. Over $30 million worth of needs within the city, so this will certainly be a start. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being so, I think, generous, gracious in terms of getting that initial $1 million figure to make this happen.
Mr. President? Quick
Councilman
question.
Rader.
Thank you. Are these expenditures somehow in some way reflected in the current budget book through, I'm sure it's a multitude of things in different.
That I don't know, potentially in the capital budget, I could imagine.
It's all appropriated in the ARPA budget, so there's $31 million there.
Okay.
Good. All right, good enough for me. Thank you.
Vice President Keppel.
Thank you. And I obviously support prioritizing this, if you've been paying attention to anything I've been saying the last couple of years. So, but one question I did have is my understanding, so in this particular instance, because I know there's been some concern about making sure that our usage of the ARPA dollars fall under eligible use categories, and my understanding was that the ARPA projects would be under eligible use categories. So part of, I think, the idea of, in this particular instance of that section that we've been amending on all of these, of the administration also committing unencumbered ARPA dollars, was to sort of move forward together with putting a good chunk towards a project that we know to be eligible use. So
Well, and I won't speak for the administration per se, but we simply amended, and we just amended this resolution to allow for any use. I'm relatively confident where there are eligible uses and where ARPA is. It's somewhat fungible if the highest and best use of a dollar is for ADA or some other project, as long as both projects happen through one funding source or another. So I suppose I don't know what the difference is from what you're describing.
because if $700,000 come out of the general fund for this instead of under ARPA dollars, then other projects in the council appropriations next year may not be able to come out of the ARPA money. I mean, it's all money that council allocates. I was just looking for, what I was looking for was some clarification from the administration about
Which fund?
which fund.
And this allows for it to be ARPA or general fund or some other fund in terms of the resolution that we amended. Do I sense a comment, Director Rankator?
I would echo your comments, President Litton. So if it's for ADA purposes, it's going to be eligible use. And then we will not, any project that you've proposed and put forward, we should have enough in our revenue replacement funds, if that was your concern, to be able to still do those projects. So I would say don't worry about that part.
If I can continue, the projects we've put forward so far, or the remaining 700,000 to be allocated in 2024?
I think there's a lot of, we need to look into where we're at in terms of the dollar amount used towards revenue replacement, especially with the passage of all this tonight. So we can certainly meet to discuss that, but we wouldn't have that in front of us right now.
Understood. Okay. Well, perhaps we can determine that via email, but any further questions or discussion points on ADA in this resolution?
Mr. President, I think, well, I have a question that if it wasn't covered by the, Mr. Rader's question, I want to make sure I clarify. To the administration, this may be for Director Gordon as well as Director Rankator. So let's say we were to approve the additional million in this resolution, whether tonight or soon. Is the work that this would fund already paid for or partly paid for in other capital plans already in the budget book? Not, I think Director Rankator, you did a good job of answering the question of whether ARPA funds in general were allocated, but if the question instead is how much of the ADA work is already anticipated to be addressed and completed in the 2024 budget already in front of us, and how much more would get done by this 1 million, or are we overlapping so that this new 1 million would displace other funds? Can we speak to that at all?
I think right now it would be challenging to answer that question because we'd have to look at projects and timelines. Remember, these ARPA dollars do have timelines associated with them. So we're to the point where we're at the end of 2023. Everything needs to be bid and contracted by the end of 2024. It would be extremely challenging to put this towards any sort of new project and for it to be fully developed, bidded properly, and in contract within the remaining year.
Okay, thank you. That's a helpful answer. So, I mean, I think is the spirit of this resolution that it's additive. You know, so are we covering more of the needs identified in the plan or not? And that may be difficult to do given the timelines the mayor just, you know, correctly summarized. So I don't know the answer to that either, but you know, I prefer to know, like, if we're going to allocate these funds to this purpose, I'd like to cover more ground with them.
Fair, and I think everybody's asked some very good questions. I think the spirit of this resolution, from my perspective, is to do two things. One is to illustrate council's commitment to the ADA transition plan, not just in word, but in deed, sort of put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, on the topic. So I think that's important, one. But two, $300,000 spent from ARPA now on a needed ADA need now saves us $300,000 in general fund dollars later that could be put to the same purpose or some other purpose important to the city and allocated by this council. So for me, ADA is shovel-ready. That's a good thing to put our funding through. Shovel-ready from the perspective there are projects already in the offing that are going to happen. It's not perhaps not unlike the Hawk crosswalk, and being able to make sure from Councilman Shackner, in terms of something that was already contemplated, but was expedited by the fact that he wanted to fund that project specifically. So I view it in that sort of a context.
Mr. President, maybe in the thought we could put this sort of with, or at least anticipate passage of this after we have our discussion about capital budget then, just so we have a clearer picture of all the things, all the wonderful things. And I agree with you. I think, anything we can put towards capital expenses generally is good. It saves us money in the long run, and especially capital expenses that help the accessibility of our city makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, with that, if possible, I'd prefer to not throw it at committee of the whole, just because we're going to have a special meeting, and it's going to be full of plenty of things already. So I'll just amend my motion to move to defer.
Second.
Item 30. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the topic? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And with that, after uncharacteristically extending the meeting with those last 5 resolutions, are there any, oh, I'm sorry, public comment. Do we have any people signed up for public comment? Allow us to call names just in order of when they sign up. That's quite all right. You may be the only one, and you're in the right place. So just hold on one second. I think you guessed right. And I'll simply, I can't, is it Levi? Yep. Okay, first person and only person signed in for public comment is Levi, is it Barrett or Barrett? Barrett. Barrett. Name and address for the record, because I just butchered it. Apologies.
1325 Row Road. Hi, my name is Levi Barrett. I'm here to talk today about the issue of Palestine. These two nations have had a so-called temporary humanitarian pause for a week until Israel started killing again. Over the last 2 months now, over 15,000 Palestinians have been murdered. They are under a seemingly never-ending terror campaign where their sons and daughters are being murdered simply for being Palestinian. Our federal government supplies weapons and the funding for this. Most of those who were murdered were in their schools and hospitals. How would you feel if a loved one went to school and never came back? In Lakewood, we pride ourselves on some of the best and safest schools in the region. If you truly believe in that, then stand in solidarity with the children of Gaza and the West Bank who are being terrorized right now. This weekend, during the Light Up Lakewood tree laying event, the citizens of Lakewood joined in protesters in demanding a ceasefire. This action was also supported by the police of Lakewood, who not only shut down hecklers among the crowd, but were also seen taking selfies with the Palestinian protesters. It's clear the city of Lakewood stands with Palestinians, and as its representatives, it's your duty to represent them here in this body by standing with Palestine. I ask for this body to pass a resolution calling for permanent ceasefire between Israel and Palestine, as the cities of Akron and Detroit already have. I use the rest of my time to read out a resolution I provided. Whereas the city of Lakewood stands in solidarity with the Palestinian people of Gaza, who are currently facing a campaign of ethnic cleansing and collective punishment by the state of Israel, and whereas collective punishment is considered a war crime under international law, and refers to a form of sanctions imposed on persons or a group of persons in response to a crime committed by one of them or a member of the group, and whereas the state of Israel is engaging in collective punishment against the Palestinian people in Gaza in response to the October 7th attacks on Israel. And whereas this collective punishment of the Palestinian people includes cutting off access to electricity, drinking water, food, and humanitarian aid, and whereas the UN says approximately 2 million people in Gaza may soon run out of drinking water and all medical care, whereas ethnic cleansing refers to the creation of an ethnically homogeneous geographic area through the elimination of unwanted ethnic groups by deportation, forcible displacement, or genocide, and whereas Israel is now engaged in an ethnic cleansing campaign, explicitly requiring 2 million Palestinians to leave Gaza immediately or risk being bombed in their homes by the Israeli army, and whereas the Gaza Strip, one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, has been repeatedly referred to by the human rights groups as the world's largest open-air prison, even prior to this conflict, And whereas Gaza is known as the world's largest open-air prison due to ongoing unbearable living conditions imposed by the State of Israel, including a full air, land, and sea blockade, inclusion of its borders by concrete walls and barbed fences, and strict prohibition of Palestinians from leaving and entering the territory freely. And whereas this blockade in Gaza has caused a 42% unemployment rate, while 84% of the population relies on humanitarian aid, 41% of Palestinians have too little food, 60% of Palestinian children are anemic, and the Gazan population cannot count on more than 2 to 4 hours of continuous electrical power a day. And whereas prior to this current water shortage, only 1% of Gaza population had access to safe drinking water, leaving Gaza's population, half of whom are children, increasingly vulnerable to waterborne illnesses, infections, and dehydration. And whereas Israel has not allowed many common cancer diagnosis and treatment tools, including PET-CT and radiotherapy, to enter Gaza since 2007, and whereas pediatric cancer cases that are typically considered treatable are often fatal in the Gaza Strip as a result of the lack of healthcare and restrictions on movement, and whereas the State of Israel will not be able to maintain an apartheid regime without enormous military aid provided by the United States every year, thereby also depriving Americans of money for their own urgent needs. And whereas we mourn the loss of all civilian lives on both sides from October 7th to the present, and also for the decades of displacement, occupation, and blockade endured in Gaza and the West Bank, now therefore it be resolved that the City of Lakewood take seriously the treaty of never again, and that history of memory of the Holocaust means fighting ethnic cleansing and apartheid everywhere, and be it further resolved that the City of Lakewood calls for the immediate end of Israeli apartheid and occupation and blockade of Palestinian land by the Israeli military forces, and be it further resolved that the City of Lakewood opposes all existing and any future military aid to Israel, and be it further resolved that the City of Lakewood calls for the immediate exchange of the over 200 Israeli hostages in Gaza for the over 1,000 political prisoners held in Israeli prisons.
Were you close there anyway?
No, I've got a little bit more. I've got a copy.
If you don't mind, do you mind possibly emailing that to City Council?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any updates from the administration or announcements? Okay. Any updates or announcements from City Council? Councilman Bullock.
Mr. President, I want to thank the Lakewood Public Safety and Lakewood Public Works, the fire, the police, and the Public Works for a fantastic Light Up Lakewood festival over the past weekend. It was across the board a great day, cleaned up, super well attended. There were firefighters, including the community paramedic, very visible. The police, is the member of the public just shared, were there in every sense at the traffic crossings all throughout the event, and then when there were citizens who were using their First Amendment rights, they were escorted for safety, and that was peacefully done. And then there were the big heavy salt trucks to block vehicle access and control vehicle access and make for a safe environment, which is, I'm very glad that we've been continuing that. So 100% across the board, good evening. Thanks for making that possible.
Well said update, and it wasn't the best of weather nights either, and Lakewood always shows up, which is great to see on every front. Any other updates, colleagues? Councilman Baker.
Seeing it's your second to last meeting, I think we should congratulate St. Ed's on their state title in football.
I may have been considering a resolution for our next meeting. May or may not. I've never had a three-peat resolution. I'll have to contemplate that. Go Eagles. Yes. Any other updates? All right. Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.